Hello, everybody, and welcome to Box Seat Banter. I'm your host, Billy Ballas, a baseball coach, a huge fan, season ticket holder. Today, I'm broadcasting from Mount Davis at the Oakland Coliseum. We're peeling back the tarps to sit high up on here. It's a stadium, and joining me back at the program is Matt Hutchison. He is a huge fan in Bay Area sports, and if you look closely, you may find him in Moneyball catching Scott Hattenberg's home run there and to cap off a 20-game win streak. Matt, welcome back to the program.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the plug on Moneyball. I had to sit in the stands for 4 hours and got one hot dog to jump up and down.
Yeah, are the royalties still coming in on that one at least?
Slowly. I think I get like a couple peanuts mailed to me, but they're the ones that they sweep off the ground.
Oh, well, perfect. You can't beat ballpark peanuts.
No.
And so, yeah, we are talking about the Oakland A's. You were on the program earlier talking about the Giants, and we're back in the Bay talking about the A's. The A's are one of the 8 charter organizations of the American League, formed back in 1901 in Philadelphia. They're the Philadelphia Athletics. The A's are also a 3-town team, a rare 3-town team. I think the Braves, I want to say, are another one who were in Boston and Milwaukee and Atlanta. But the A's were in Philadelphia from 01 to 54. They moved to Kansas City for about a decade. They were in Kansas City from 55 to 67. Then they moved out west in 68, and they've been in Oakland ever since. They've played at the Oakland Coliseum the entire time they've been in Oakland. It is the field there. They renamed the field recently in the past few years, Rickey Henderson Field. Matt, the Coliseum, one of the great stadiums in baseball, right?
It's a hidden gem. If you ever get a chance to come up here, you're gonna want to see it. Take a trip to the men's restroom and pee in a trough.
Oh man, the trough, that's old school. Now
No, I can't do it. I get shy.
In San Francisco, they were in Candlestick for years, which was not exactly known as the most welcoming stadium. And then they moved into that new stadium there in San Francisco there. I think it was Pac-Bell Park originally, or SBC Park. Beautiful stadium there. Oakland, they're struggling there in the Coliseum, and I think there've been, a new stadium has been discussed for a long time, right?
Yeah, they've had a couple sites where they had plans and it fell through. I think Jack London Square in Oakland and another one on the waterfront, and it just doesn't seem to work. I think Lake Merritt was one of them. It's sad because they're throwing money into the Coliseum and they still can't get people to go there.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, the Coliseum, it used to be a dual-purpose stadium. Now it's back to just being baseball, but it's still got just acres and acres of foul territory there. Very different than any other stadium currently in existence. So hopefully they do get a new stadium, or they can figure out something for them in Oakland to get a nice playing surface and a nice atmosphere for the fans and the players. Now the A's have been very successful since the turn of the century here. They've won the West a handful of times in 2000 and 02, 03, 06, 2012, 13, and just this year again in 2020. They were the wild card winners in 01, in 2014, 18, and 19. They have not won the pennant, however, in this area, despite all those playoff appearances. And of course, if you don't win the pennant, you can't win the World Series. So in the past quarter century, no World Series titles. They do have 9 overall, though. 5 of them in Philadelphia and 4 in Oakland. I feel like people don't talk about how great teams that Oakland has had. When you talk about the 70s, you talk about the Big Red Machine, but people don't talk about the Oakland A's. They won 3 titles in a row in 72, 3, and 4. Are those celebrated a lot in Oakland?
Yeah, Oakland has even when you're talking about the Warriors, they got a diehard fan base at both of those stadiums. And so with diehard fan bases, you got guys that are clinging to the good years and can remember all those names and remember all the, it's kind of like you, when you talk about like UCLA football, you could tell me exactly what year so-and-so threw a game-winning touchdown. And when you walk into the Coliseum,
1996.
Yeah, thank you. When you walk into the Coliseum, there's murals, Raleigh Fingers and all the guys, murals painted on the walls and stuff. So yeah, it's still clinging strong to those memories for a lot of people.
Yeah. Then they also had that stretch at the end of the 80s, 88, 89, and 90, where they won 3 straight pennants. They lost the World Series in 88 and 90, but they won the 89 World Series of the Battle of the Bay, which was interrupted by that earthquake in 89. But so that was their 4th title in Oakland, and they're looking for number 5 and to get to number 10 overall. You mentioned some of those great names, Raleigh Fingers. He's one of the few players to have his number retired by the A's. He has had his number 34 retired. Reggie Jackson had number 9 retired. Ricky Henderson, number 24. Catfish Hunter, number 27. And Dennis Eckersley, number 43. And then, of course, 42, which is retired throughout baseball. So some great names, Hall of Famers there, that Oakland has had in the throughout their history, and they've got some other very interesting names in the past quarter century that we will discuss here shortly.
And I got to thank you, Billy. You went right past 88 and you didn't rub it in, so I appreciate you.
Well, the show is still young, so maybe I will later on.
Wouldn't blame you.
Matt, I love the trivia aspect of the show. Last week, we're talking about the Rangers. The trivia question was, who is the career leader in hits, home runs, and stolen bases? So in each category for the Texas Rangers. Last week, Joey had he threw out guesses for each of them. I think he, without saying which ones were right and which ones were wrong, I think he got 2 out of the 3 correct. Before I reveal the answer, do you have a guess for any of those on the Rangers? Do you know much?
I know very little about the Rangers. So hits, I would just pick somebody based on longevity, and I'd guess Rodriguez.
Okay.
I'll go with Pudge. Home runs. Ooh, Palmeiro.
Okay.
Steals, I'll go with, I'm looking like a middle infielder or speedy outfielder, Kinsler. Those are probably the 3 names I can think of.
Those are good. Those are good names, good guesses. I don't know where those guys are on the list. They're not at first. I'm sure they're in the top 10, but they're not at number 1. Career leader in hits for the Texas Rangers, Michael Young. He won a couple batting titles there, led the league in hits a couple times there in Texas. The leader in home runs, Juan Gonzalez, won a couple MVPs there in Texas. And the stolen base leader, you were on the right track in terms of like a speedy middle infield guy. That would be their shortstop, Elvis Andrus, who's a career leader in stolen bases. Now, I mean, you're not a Rangers guy, so I don't expect you to get that. But let's see how you can do with your A's trivia. I had a couple that I'll throw your way. One is just kind of a, historical tidbit that's not exactly the most positive A's thing, but it is something that we can throw out there. They were on the wrong end of a, very famous defensive play where in the American League Divisional Series, there was a ball hit down the line into the corner. The right fielder airmailed the throw home, and Jeter came out of nowhere and flipped it to the plate to get Jeremy Giambi out at the plate. Who was at bat? Who hit that ball for the A's? Do you remember?
That one still stings. Jeremy Giambi, I don't know if he slides or if he just doesn't run like a 45-year-old man. Terrence Long gets that RBI.
Yeah, maybe Jeremy Giambi should have skipped a couple cheeseburgers before the game or something.
Yep. I'll go with Terrence Long.
Terrence Long. Okay. Now to the main trivia question, a little more positive about the Oakland A's. in the past quarter century, back to 95, which players have won the major awards for the A's? That'd be the MVP, the Cy Young, and the Rookie of the Year. Do you remember any of those award winners for the A's?
2002 was a good year because you had the Cy Young and the MVP. You go with Miguel Tejada with the MVP, and the Cy Young was Barry Zito before he came over to the Giants and forgot how to pitch. And Rookie of the Year, Bobby Crosby, I think at shortstop.
Okay.
I don't know if there was another MVP, Jason Giambi.
Okay.
The brother who could hit.
Okay. I will say you've guessed two MVPs, one Cy Young, and one Rookie of the Year. You seem very confident in some of those guesses. I won't say whether they're right or wrong. I'll let I'll leave it open for the listeners to also be able to get guesses in. So I will not confirm any of those guesses. I will say though that they do have two MVPs, which you've guessed two MVPs, one Cy Young, which you've guessed, and they have 4 Rookie of the Years. You've guessed 1 Rookie of the Year. Do you want to throw guesses out for any others?
I'm going to sound dumb if I throw out guys that didn't even start their career with the A's, but Eric Chavez, Matt Chapman, Barry Zito.
Okay. All right. So those are the guesses. Listeners, if you want to chime in with your answers, you can do so on social media, Twitter or Instagram at Box Seat Banter on both those platforms. Let me see your guesses if you've got any. The owners for the A's, as we go back in this period, Walter Haas, he seems like an appropriate owner for the A's, because if you talk about the A's, he's got a couple A's in his last name, Haas. I kind of, do you think he was like, this is a good fit for my last name, I'm going to buy this team?
It must have been what it was.
So he owned the team from 1980 to 1995. Then he sold the team to Stephen Schott and Ken Hoffman, who owned the team from 95 to 05. And then John Fisher bought the team in 05. He's the current owner. Matt, what do fans in Oakland feel about the owner situation there? They're famously known as, one of the small budget teams. Their payroll is always pretty small. What do they feel about ownership? Are they behind them or what?
We want new owners. They had, you talk about teams that moved from Philadelphia to Oakland. You can talk about the Warriors too. It's the same kind of thing. They had ownership groups that the fans were loyal to the team and not so much to the owners. And then they got a new owner for the Warriors, and willing to spend, willing to bring in free agents and build the team and build the fan experience. And you see the result. And I mean, I think every Oakland A's fan that I know hopes for the same thing for the A's.
Yeah. One of those owners for the Warriors, I think, is it Peter Guber? Is that his name? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's got a stake in the Dodgers ownership. Let's just say, sell your stake in the Dodgers ownership and instead invest in the A's. Let's see if you can bring this Warriors magic to the A's.
I'd be good with that.
Now, the general managers, the front office, I feel like there might be some more support from the fans in this group. Sandy Alderson was the GM, very well-known general manager who was kind of at the forefront of this analytics craze that we're in now. He was the GM from 83 to 98, and he was the one who hired Billy Beane, the Moneyball man. He's Billy Beane was the GM from 98 to 2015. His current position is the vice president of baseball operations. So he's a little above the GM, and the current GM is David Frost. He's been at that position since 2015. So what's the level of support from the fans as far as the front office goes?
I think they recognize that the front office is handcuffed a little bit, and they do a lot with a little for the front office. So I think the fans are okay with them. It is what it is. When the boss above the front office says you can't write that check, then you're kind of stuck.
Yeah. And is there any concern I know that there's been talk about Billy Beane having an ownership stake in a group that's, I think, buying the Red Sox or something. I don't know. He's got some stake in something, and then if that goes through, he would have to give up his position in the Oakland front office. Is there concern in Oakland about that possibility?
Not that is talked about openly, like on sports radio or anything like that. I think the A's are kind of set in their ways. They're gonna build up their farm teams and they're gonna develop talent, and then it's gonna get too expensive for them, and they're gonna leave. We kind of understand that.
Yeah. Now the men who are in charge of that talent on the field, they've had some big names here. Starting with somebody who is, I'll give you a little information about him. Let's see if you can name the manager. This one is credited with the modern use of bullpens. He's also one of the few managers in history to have passed the bar exam.
La Russa?
Yeah, La Russa. I feel like passing the bar exam might have come in handy recently for him. But yeah, he was the guy who really started that matchup play in the bullpen. Now we have that 3-batter minimum rule. He came out of retirement. Now he'll be managing the White Sox this year, but a lot of success there in Oakland at the end of the 80s there. Again, he was the manager who was at the helm for their 3 pennants and their 89 World Series team. Then he was replaced by somebody who was portrayed by Philip Seymour Hoffman in Moneyball.
You want the name?
Yeah.
Or you Art Howe?
Yeah. Art Howe, who I don't think he was very pleased with his portrayal in Moneyball in the book or the movie. But yeah, he was at the helm there. Very successful teams in Oakland, but didn't exactly get along with the front office. So then somebody who I think did get along better with the front office was brought in, and it was somebody who, as a player, played for both the Expos and the Blue Jays in his career. Had that little tour of Canada going on. Do you remember who that was?
We're catching up with Maka or Guerin, I think now, and I don't know which one's next.
Ken Maka. So from 03 to 06, he was the manager. And if you were able to come up with a couple names, you by process of elimination, I think you'll get this next one. Something fun about him. He was on Family Feud back in 1988.
Where do you get these facts?
Sometimes you just are watching, Game Show Network late at night one time and somebody pops up and you're like, I think that guy used to manage the A's.
Hey, I know that guy.
Yeah, he choked on Fast Money, though.
It's easy to do.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know what their status was on Family Feud, but so Bob Guerin was the manager from 07 to 2011. And their current manager is currently the longest tenured manager with the same team in the big leagues.
Bob Melvin.
Yeah. So he's been around there for about 10 years now, since 2011. We had a time there when third managers, they were mainstays of their ball club. That hasn't been the case so much recently. They say the thing about coaches is, you're just hired to be fired. So it's nice to see that Melvin there for, about a decade so far. What do you feel? You have any comments on any of these managers?
Melvin's pretty much universally liked and respected. There was talk, I want to say a few years ago, of him leaving, like the A's just saying, we're not going to pay a manager to manage these young kids. We're going to get rid of the manager, start over, and let him go. And I think that another team would have been happy to get him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the success on the field speaks for itself. So obviously he's done very well. I think he managed previously in Arizona. I feel like he had one other managerial job before his current one. I'm not sure, but he's done very well in Oakland. So you kind of bookmark this period with La Russa and Melvin with a couple of great managers.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, let's talk about the Oakland A players in this team that I've put together for the past quarter century. A reminder to the listeners, the rules for this project, you go back 25 years, so we're going back to 1995. This was done before the 2020 season, so it runs from 95 to 2019. You pick one player per year. You cannot repeat players, and you must form a coherent roster. It's a fun little endeavor if you want to take it on. And so we'll start here with the Oakland A's, starting at the catcher position. I'm taking Jason Kendall from 06, Torrance High grad. Gotta love having a Tartar on the roster. He was worth 3.7 wins. Very good defensively. By this point later in his career, he didn't have much power. He did hit 295. Strikeout to walk ratio was just about 1-to-1, so tough to strike out. And he battled up there, got on base at a good clip. Over at first base, Jason Giambi from 2000, worth 7.8 wins, 43 home runs, and he led the league in walks with 137 walks. In the Moneyball, Billy Beane famously would ask Paul DePodesta, but can he get on base? And Jason Giambi could sure get on base. Led the league with an OBP of 476, OPS plus of 187. Also led the league. His OPS was over 1100. Wow, huge. He was the MVP and All-Star that year. So I think you kind of revealing an answer that he was one of those MVP winners. At second base, Mark Ellis in 07 hit 19 home runs there. And he was solid with the glove. So it's nice to get a little bit of pop out of a second baseman who provided some nice defensive value. At third base, Matt Chapman from 2018. He was worth 8.3 wins, 24 home runs, 42 doubles, won the Gold Glove. Tremendous defender over there at the hot corner. And wrapping up the infield, Marcus Semien at shortstop from 2019. He was an MVP candidate. He was worth 8.9 wins, hit 33 home runs, 43 doubles. He was rated very highly with the glove. So that's the starting infield. Matt, do you have any comments on these infielders?
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I are pretty much going to be in line with most of that stuff. Maybe a changing of a year or one player or so. But yeah, shortstop, we got Marcus Semien instead of Miguel Tejada, but that's the way things shuffle out in this game sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, Tejada, we'll get to that in the next segment, but a lot of competition there when he was on the team. Moving along to the outfield, doesn't quite live up to the high bar that the infield set, at least from the players that I've chosen here. We've got Coco Crisp in left field. The switch hitter was worth 3.4 wins. Not a lot of pop, but he did swipe 32 bags, decent with the glove. In center field, the lefty Mark Kotze from 04 hit 15 home runs, 37 doubles, triple slash of 314, 370, 459. So not a lot of power, but he got on base at a pretty good clip, good average there, solid defensively in center. And then finishing up in right field, Yoenis Cespedes from 2012. The Cuban hit 23 bombs, 25 doubles, 292, 356, 505 slash. And then at DH, I've got John Jaha from 99. 35 home runs from John Jaha that year. And so yeah, what do you got on these outfielders here?
Yeah. I mean, Cespedes is a guy that everybody wished the A's would have kept. I know you like an outfielder with a good arm that can throw somebody out. Mm-hmm. He's got an absolute cannon. You can't hate on a guy named Coco Crisp. that guy has to be on your roster by default, I think.
Yeah, and he had some great cornrows back in the day too.
Mm-hmm.
Then as we get to the bench here, it's kind of surprising to see this guy on the bench, Mark McGwire in 96. Although really, I mean, you probably get him and Giambi in the lineup, probably DH and McGwire instead of Jaha. But in 96, McGwire 52 home runs, which led the league. He also led the league in on base, slugging, OPS, and OPS plus. He was an all-star and a silver slugger. Josh Donaldson, the other infielder we've got on the bench from 2013. He was solid defensively, 24 home runs, 37 doubles, hit over 300, slugged just a hair under 500. And then our backup outfielder, Chris Davis from 2017, consistent with the average. I think he had like 4 years in a row or something where he hit like exactly 247 or something like that. He hit 43 home runs for the A's in 2017. And then wrapping up the position players, the backup catcher, Brent Mayne in 97. He's pretty much what you need a backup catcher to do. He is adequate with the stick and he provides good value on defense. So what do you got on these guys? I mean, McGwire, you're going to have him on an A's roster, right?
Yeah, I don't think you can leave him off. But I agree with you with getting Donaldson on there too, and Chris Davis. We have a little bit difference with our catcher and our extra outfielder. But yeah, you and I are pretty much right on line.
Yeah. Then as we get to the pitching staff, we'll start with 1998 Kenny Rogers, the lefty. I know we talked about Rogers on the program last week for Texas. He was also with the A's and put up a good year in 98. Went 16-8, logged a lot of innings, 3.17 ERA. He's not going to strike a lot of guys out, but he'll keep the ball in the yard. He'll get those ground balls. Barry Zito, great year in 02, 23-5. I mean, you don't see a guy win 23 games anymore. 23-5, 2.75 ERA. He started 35 games. It's another thing that you don't really see anymore. He had that great curveball, and this is before his velo really dropped. Very effective there in Oakland. Tim Hudson in 03, 16-7, 2.7 ERA, 2 shutouts, which led the league. Rich Hill in 2016. I think this is a rare instance where I've got a player on my roster on the team before he was traded. He's actually traded away to the Dodgers that year in 2016 and pitched well for the Dodgers down the stretch. But when he was in Oakland, he was phenomenal. He only made 14 starts. I think he battled some blisters that year as well. So being traded away and the blisters limited his starts and his innings for Oakland. But when he was on the hill, he was dominant, striking out 10.7 per 9. He had an ERA of 2.25. Then wrapping up the rotation, Sonny Gray in 2015 went 14-7, 2.73 ERA, 2 shutouts in over 200 innings. So Matt, what do you think about this rotation here?
I like your rotation. I would switch one of them. I think we'll talk about that next.
Yeah. The who do you think? Who'd you give the ball to on opening day out of these 5?
Oof. You know what? I'm going to give it to Hudson because I get to like him on both teams that I've been on your show for.
Well, Zito's the same case.
That's true. But when Zito came to the Giants, he kind of, I was going to say the S word. He S-worded the bed. It's a family program. We're going to be respectful here.
Yeah, we got to keep that clean rating on there. As we get to the bullpen, we'll start with Houston Street in 05. Across 78 1/3 innings. So he pitched 78 1/3 innings in 67 games. So he could get you, more than 3 outs at a time. 1.72 ERA, 23 saves there. Andrew Bailey in 09, he was worth 3.7 wins. He went 6-3 out of the pen with a 1.84 ERA. He also could get you, multiple outs at a time. He had 83 1/3 innings across 54 appearances. He saved 26. Grant Balfour, not the best name for a pitcher, ball 4, you'd rather your name be like strike 3 or something. But he was very good out of the pen for the A's. 2011, he went 5-2 with an ERA about 2.5. And despite that last name, he had just 20 walks in his 62 innings. Dan Otero in 2014, ERA of about 2.25. Moving along, Joey Devine in 2008. He only threw 45 and 2/3 innings in 42 appearances, but he was just unhittable. Struck out 49 guys, an ERA of about half a run. He went 6-1 with a .59 ERA. Jason Isringhausen from 2001 saved 34 games, had an ERA a little over 2.5 for the A's. And then Rick Honeycutt, the lefty from 95, he went 5-1 out of the pen there. ERA under 2.5. And he was, I think, he was a starter early in his career, but now he'd moved to the pen. I don't know if La Russa was using him. That was La Russa's, I think, last year at the helm for the A's. He may have been used as a loogie that year. He had averaged less than an inning per appearance there for the A's. So Matt, what do you think about this bullpen? Who are you giving the ball to in a big situation?
Oof. When you look at that bullpen, I don't know that the closer necessarily jumps out at you because you got a few guys, but not one of those dominant names that you remember from closing games. But what I'll tell you about Balfour is that guy was a competitor. He was an intense dude. Mm-hmm. He'd stand up on the mound and just stare down anybody. So if I have to have an out and I got to have a guy that's going to compete, I'll take him.
Okay. Yeah. So they certainly have some impressive numbers. I think the reliever ERA as a group is just about 2, and the ERA as a staff is about 2.5. So yeah, some great numbers there from this team, and then we'll get to some of the guys that we miss coming right up. Now, Matt, I understand, have put together an A's roster as well. So let's hear your roster. I know that there's some similarities to mine, but then a few differences as well. So let's see what you've got. What do you think?
So we can start with the difference right off the top. As my catcher, I got a whole 0.1 more win than you did. I took Kurt Suzuki in 2008. He got 3.8 wins. So, I mean, I had to bench Kendall for that. Sorry. And then, you and I are right in line on Jason Giambi starting at first for us. I also had Mark Ellis at second base, but I had him in 2005. Mm-hmm. Matt Chapman playing third, Marcus Semien playing shortstop, same years as you. I also had Kotsay and Coco Crisp, but I flip-flopped them. I got Kotsay in left and Coco in center. And then my right fielder, instead of Cespedes, I had Josh Reddick in 2012. I got Mark McGwire like you did and Josh Donaldson on my bench, but I took Donaldson in 2014, I think just before he left the A's. And then for my outfielders, I got Chris Davis in 2017 lining up with you, Stan Javier in 1995. We've talked about this before, but there's some lean years, but Stan Javier got me 3.5 wins in 1995.
Stan Javier, man, he was kicking around for a long time.
Yeah. And then my backup catcher is Jason Kendall. I got a friend that went to Torrance High, so he told me all about Jason Kendall. So I had to take him. Otherwise,
sounds like a smart guy.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be invited on the show again someday when you decide to do basketball or something like that. So, Jason Kendall is my backup catcher. And then we go on to the rotation. You and I had the same rotation in terms of Kenny Rogers, Barry Zito, Tim Hudson, and Sonny Gray. But I could not break up the big three for the pitchers in Oakland, and I had to take Mark Mulder in 2001. The front office had to pick between the big three, but I didn't in this case. I wanted to keep them. My relievers, I took Brandon McCarthy in 2011. I too had Andrew Bailey in 2009. Houston Street, I took him in 2007, so a little different there. I put Rich Hill in the bullpen in 2016. Craig Breslow in 2010. Jason Isringhausen we had in common, but I had him in 99. And then I couldn't tell you who this guy is, but Billy Taylor in 1997.
Well, he's got a good name, so he's got that going for him at least.
You got to field the roster, so I had to throw him in there. And if Billy Taylor is listening, no disrespect, sir.
I'm sure he is. I mean, this show is heard all over the country, all over the world, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, he'll be calling in.
Yeah. So, I mean, right off the bat, I think the biggest name that I see in your roster that's not in mine is Mulder. You know, when you mentioned the big three, were there any other names who, you know, are maybe not on your roster or my roster that you were kind of surprised about?
In terms of pitchers or just
anybody? I think you mentioned one earlier in the show.
Yeah, I mean, we're leaving off an MVP in 2002 in Miguel Tejada, so that's tough. Eric Chavez, another fan favorite, but I don't think he's going to get us too many wins, is Eric Burns. Nick Swisher, Gio Gonzalez, and Yoenis Cespedes were off my roster.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of mine, I had Mulder, Eric Chavez as well, and Tejada as guys that I was surprised to not be on there. You know, that 0-2 team was stacked, you know, which Tejada was the MVP, Zito was the Cy Young. I mean, there's a reason why they won, you know, 20 games in a row, and it wasn't Scott Hattenberg.
But it was, because he hit the walk-off in game 20.
You know, it's surprising that he's not on this roster. You know, what about
I could have made him my backup catcher. If you watch the movie, that's where he started, and they had to teach him how to play first base.
Right. Even though playing first is incredibly hard, right?
Yeah, all of it's hard for me.
Yeah, somebody. I think. Let's see. What were the other? You know, I was. There's a player who was actually mentioned earlier in the show, who played for the A's in 95 and 98, as well as prior to that, although he was far from his prime in those years. It would have been fun to get him on the roster, but I just couldn't justify it, and that's Ricky.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have Ricky.
Yeah, Giambi, I mean, you could argue he had a better year in 01. I mean, maybe I should have taken him then and had a different reliever in 2000. I don't know. You know, it's as you put the puzzle together, it's tough. You know, you can move one thing and then the rest of the dominoes fall. So there's really a lot of ways to go about this. And then the last one I wanted to mention, Blake Trinan in 2018 out of the pen was just dominant for the A's. I think he was throwing like, you know, 101 mile two seamers. Let's see. I mean, he threw 80 innings, struck out 100 guys. His ERA was under a run. He finished 6th in the Cy Young Award that year, and he was worth like 4 wins out of the pen, which is ridiculous. But that was, let's see, 2018. That was Chapman had a huge year at third. So, you know, you can't overlook Chapman's huge year at third, but it's just disappointing that it didn't line up and you're able to get that year out of training as well. He also saved 38 games for them. So, yeah, no, just another name I want to mention.
So I just thought of another player that if I could pick a player based on one single play that I could have on my roster, it's probably not a play that anybody thinks of, but Jay Payton was playing center field for the A's, and I don't remember what year this was, but there was a slowly hit ground ball up the middle, and Jay Payton was charging it off the crack of the bat, and the batter was trying to stretch it into a double, and Jay picked up the grounder on a full sprint and sprinted into second base with a foot first slide and just karate kicked this guy in the chest and blocked the bag and tagged him out. And I've loved Jay Payton ever since. I thought that was awesome.
Was the batter runner Jeremy Giambi?
I don't think he'd have to run for that.
Yeah, so those are certainly some guys who are very deserving to be on the roster. But again, as you're kind of filling the puzzle out, it's tough to get everybody on there. Um, Matt, is this a fun little experiment to put these rosters together? I mean, you've done it before for the Giants when you were on here. You did it again for the A's. Would you recommend it to our listeners?
Absolutely. It's fun. Take your favorite team and try to do it and see that you're going to have to leave a guy off in his best year. You're going to have to leave a guy that you liked off, and it's a fun exercise. I would say with the A's, there were some years that jumped out that were a lot more obvious to me than with the Giants. And I would suspect that's probably true with a lot of the rosters that you filled out, is that some of them kind of fall into place a little easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, without putting a roster together, listeners probably yelling at us like, oh, how could you leave this guy off? Yeah, you guys are idiots. You never. So yeah, go ahead. I encourage our listeners to make your own roster. You can visit the website, boxseatbanner.com. There's a link to fill out, to download a template off of Google Spreadsheets, and you can do it there, or you can make your own spreadsheet, however you want to do it. And if you do, I would love to see the rosters that you guys create. So again, it's a lot of fun. We encourage it, whether it's the A's, whether it's another team. And, we do it for the past 25 years. You could pick any 25-year stretch in history for a team. That would be kind of fun too. What's the best roster for any team that you can create in any 25-year stretch. So yeah, go ahead and do that. And we would love to see what you guys have. Every week we open it up for a Q&A on social media. So again, make sure to follow on Twitter and Instagram at Boxy Banter on both those platforms. You can get your questions in. We offered it up for questions on the A's, and we received a few this week. First comes from Alfredo Papadakis. He just said 2 words, Rollie Fingers. And Matt, Rollie Fingers, I mean, as we discuss him, I mean, thing that pops out the most, what do you think?
Yeah, I only got one word in response, and it would be mustache.
Yeah, I mean, is that the greatest facial hair in baseball history?
Oof. I feel like there was a guy that had a mustache that connected into his sideburns, and it was just huge. Like it looked like he had a Subway sandwich stuck to his face. He might give him a run for his money, but yeah, I'll take the hometown guy.
I mean, he was like, it was manicured perfectly, all like, oiled up and waxed up and just that perfect. I mean, he looked like he was going to tie somebody to the train tracks in one of those old timey movies. And yeah, I mean, nowadays, guys, they grow the beards and stuff, but they're just like, they look sloppy and unkempt. And he was like, it was pristine.
Yeah.
And he also kind of, revolutionized the reliever. He, he's a Hall of Fame reliever. And if you look at, it's kind of funny when you look at his numbers in comparison to current relievers. Nowadays guys go, 1 inning or so. He would have seasons where he would, he had 78 appearances and 132 innings out of the pen. That's, unbelievable. You're pitching almost every day, and you're pitching, basically 2 innings every other day.
That was an era when men still pitched the baseball, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, starters don't even make that many innings nowadays.
Yeah.
But so he was great. He was on those Oakland teams that won the World Series in 72, 3, and 4. Also had some success in San Diego and Milwaukee. But yeah, they certainly don't make relievers like that anymore, and they don't grow mustaches like that anymore.
I mean, I think you probably could see one of those if you're up in like Seattle in a coffee shop or something like that, reading a book and listening to Nirvana maybe, but I don't know. You don't see them a lot anymore.
Yeah. Chris Heilman asks, who is a more prolific self-promoter, Ricky or Canseco? And I'm going to add to that. I'm going to add, Reggie Jackson into the mix, and then follow up favorite quote from either of them. So what do you think on that?
So if I put it into the context of in the game or relevance versus you were out of the game when you decided to draw the attention to you, I'm going to have to say that Jose Canseco is the bigger self-promoter. You know, Ricky was flashy. Ricky would tell people he was the greatest of all time and all that stuff, but I feel like he did it more in the context of the game or having made an accomplishment like the steals record or something like that. Jose Canseco just couldn't let it go. Jose Canseco needs people to know his name. I'm pretty sure he's the one managing his daughter's Instagram page. Gentlemen, if you're single, look it up. I don't know.
See, I agree with you, but just because of that, I think I go with Ricky because I appreciate it more in the context of baseball because that's where you've got something legitimate to promote as opposed to just trying to hang on. So I can see it from both sides. Your side makes sense because he's continually trying to promote and staying relevant. So I get that. But I'm going with the player Ricky because I mean also you can make the argument that Ricky created the home run pimp job.
Yeah, and I thinking more about it, Ricky also played until he was like 65 or something like that. So he's also a guy that didn't want to let it go. So
I think Ricky's still playing in Sunday League somewhere.
I'm sure he is.
Do you have a favorite quote from Ricky?
I would get it wrong, but you've told me the story, and I think you know exactly what story.
Yeah, the John Olerud one.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it again.
It's so they're playing in Seattle together. So the legend goes. And John Olerud famously wore a skull cap in the field due to an injury that he had suffered years before. So he had to protect his head. And one day during BP, and Ricky famously does not really know the names of teammates or people who he's been around. He probably should know their names. And he walks up to Olerud. He goes, I played in Toronto with a guy that wore a helmet on his head in the field like that. And Olerud goes, yeah, Ricky, that was me. And they played together in Toronto and they played together on the Mets before they were together in Seattle. So, I don't know if it's true or not, but a story like that is just too good to, you got to believe it's true.
Yeah, I tend to believe it. But what's your favorite quote from any of those guys?
That's definitely my favorite Ricky story. I love the confidence that he had, his, when he broke Lou Brock's record, proclaiming, that Lou Brock is a great base stealer, but today I am the greatest. It's simple and it's accurate. But pretty much any Ricky, with Ricky, it's not so much like a single quote. It's more the story, like that story with Olerud. There was a time when he was in San Diego, and again, not knowing his teammates, he's on third base, and Ryan Klesko's at bat, and Ricky's down the line, clapping down the line, drive me in T, which I don't know where you find the T in Ryan Klesko's name to call him T. Just all kinds of stuff like that. But Ricky was one of a kind. And he had that flair that you mentioned. He would a lot of pop there too from a leadoff hitter and guy with that speed. It's unreal. And he is, I think he's the only position player in the Hall of Fame who's a throw left, bat right player, because that's the opposite of what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came up, somebody asked him, why are you? Because, if you're gonna throw one way and bat the opposite way, most guys throw right-handed and bat left-handed. You see that fairly often from position players. But Ricky was naturally left-handed, but he hits right-handed because when he would be playing baseball with the neighborhood kids, most people are right-handed. So all the kids are batting right-handed. And Ricky thought that's how you had to bat. So he went just like everyone else and hit right-handed. So he was like, I thought that's what everyone did. So I thought that's what you had to do. So Ricky bat right-handed.
I think characters like Ricky is what baseball misses out on sometimes. They don't promote them. They don't put them out there. And a lot of these stories get known at the end of a guy's career. And I mean, I think baseball would be wildly more popular if more of these stories were known about guys current day.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's guys in locker rooms right now that are a lot like Ricky in terms of the funny stories. And then you think of playing with some flash and some style and some swagger. The baseball needs more of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're starting to see it come back. It's become a little more accepted, but yeah, don't forget that Ricky was one who created that flair on the field. And our last questions come from Alex Morales, who was on the Dodger podcast, and he's been peppering us with questions here the past few weeks. His first one says, Bash Brothers, greatest duo ever? Talking about, McGwire and Canseco there in the late 80s. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, I think that there's probably been so many duos across Major League Baseball history in different teams, and the two of them are gonna get so much hate for their history with steroids and everything like that I think
Right.
that they probably get taken out of the discussion because of that. You'd have to look at what's more important to me, longevity or a handful of dominant seasons. I don't know. I don't think I would put them there. I think I'd have to think harder and find another two.
Yeah, I mean, top of my head, I'm going, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig from those Yankees in the 20s. I'm sure you could find some other great pairs. I haven't thought about it too much, but that's the one that really pops out. The other thing about, McGwire and Canseco is, McGwire did hit those 49 home runs his rookie year in 87, I want to say. But then he was good. He was really good. But he didn't really hit his peak until, the mid 90s. And yeah, you can say it may not have been natural, and Canseco, we know it's not natural. But I don't think their peaks lined up at the same time. If they had, then maybe they're in the discussion for best duo ever. But they certainly were were very exciting to watch. And yeah, you talk about the characters and the stuff like that. The Bash Brothers, it's a great nickname for, two power hitting teammates. And they were, must-see TV back then at the end of the 80s there. And they did propel, the Oakland, the A's to great success there, winning that World Series and getting to the World Series a few times. But best duo ever? I don't think so.
No, I mean, I think if you really sat down and put a lot of thought into it, I think you'd come up with quite a list that would rival them and probably surpass them.
Yeah, again, we talked about a couple weeks ago, the Mariners. I mean, Griffey and A-Rod were together for a short time in Seattle. Like, those are two of the best players in the, arguably ever, and they were together at the same time. Moving along, next question again from Alex Morales. Mulder, Hudson, Zito, were they overlooked in Moneyball?
I mean, I guess I'd have to know in what sense. In what sense overlooked? The value in terms of the team success, I don't think you could overlook them.
I just think like maybe in like the book and the movie, like were their contributions overlooked, and like were guys like, your Scott Hattenbergs made up, bigger?
Yeah, I think in that sense for sure. I mean, you have three of the best pitchers in the league on one team. It's a pretty good starting block to start your race from, and a pretty good chance of having a successful team. Yeah, that team in Moneyball had a lot of guys that stepped up in the right times, and all the stars aligned, and they got, you got the lucky hit, the good hit right at the right time, and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't have starting pitching that's putting you in a game and giving you a chance, Scott Hatteberg doesn't hit that home run.
Yeah. I think that they focus a lot on like Hattenberg and like those relievers. Like they had the sidearm guy, I forget his name. But so they focus on those kind of pieces there, those guys, finding the market inefficiency, which was kind of like the main idea of Moneyball, players who had value but were overlooked by the market. But yeah, they don't talk about the great seasons that Mulder, Hudson, Zito, and like Miguel Tejada had, which, I mean, I understand it from their point. They really have to emphasize those other guys kind of at the margins, because that's what put them over the top. You can't. We've seen in baseball more than any other sport, probably, especially more than basketball. You need more than just those three guys to compete. But yeah, they are, I think, overlooked in Moneyball. But I understand the rationale in doing it.
Yeah.
Then the last thing that Morales brought up was, do you love Billy Koch? And I think he's referring to, he's circling back to Torrance High here. Justin Miller, former pitcher in the big leagues. He was teammates with Billy Koch in Toronto, I think. And Billy Koch pitched for Oakland for a couple of years, actually saved 44 games for them back in 2002 on that Moneyball team. Led the league in games finished there for the A's. Great closer. I think he was teammates with Miller, and he offered $500 or something. He offered some kind of money. I don't know what the amount was, to Justin Miller. And Justin Miller, for those of you who don't know, had tattoos all over his arms. They actually made the Justin Miller rule for him. He had to have long sleeves when he pitched to cover up those tattoos. Billy Koch offered him a sum of money to get a tattoo on his rear end. I love Billy Koch, and Justin Miller did it. He got it tattooed on his butt. So I think that's what Alex Morales, the former teammate of Justin Miller, was bringing up.
So do I love Billy Koch enough to get the tattoo?
Yeah. How much money would it take for you to get that tattooed?
I don't know. Didn't they draw the Mega Millions today?
I don't know. I haven't been paying attention.
Yeah, I think they draw the Mega Millions today at 8. But it would take far less to get "I love Billy Ballas" tattooed.
That was the follow-up question.
I'd be willing to get that tattoo.
Well, and then as we're on sticking with the Billies, I have one final question for you. What is Billy Beane's legacy? Because he's been very successful in Oakland with that payroll that we've discussed. It's tough to work with that, but he has managed it and done very well. He's had all these division titles. He's put the team in playoffs. He's been in contention, seemingly year in and year out. But what's his legacy? Because he's been unable to win that final game.
Yeah, and I think from the outside looking in, if you're not an A's fan, that might play more in your mind. But I think if you are an A's fan and you look at Billy Beane, you're thankful for how competitive they've been year in and year out. If you like rooting for an underdog, the A's are a good team to be able to do it with. And Billy Beane gives you plenty to cheer about, and pulling the right strings and putting the right people on the field and putting out a competitive product with the constraints that he works under. I would never take a knock off his legacy just because he hasn't won the World Series. I think that they've been in games they probably didn't belong in, and they've had success that was above and beyond the expectations more times than not. And Billy Beane will always be a fan favorite and be revered in Oakland, I think.
I agree with all that. I'm not there. I'm not the A's fan that you are, but from my perspective, cannot argue with anything you say. Is it tough as an Oakland fan to root for the team, knowing that some of your favorite players, won't be wearing an A's uniform for as long as you would like them?
Definitely. I know that you and I have talked a lot about the Dodgers and how they've built up their farm system, and they've had success with those guys. And then when those guys become stars, the Dodgers are willing to sit down at the negotiation table and cut the check and keep them. And that's all any fan base is going to want. If I fall for this guy as my player, and I love the dude and I want to root for him and cheer for him, I don't want it to be for 2, 3, 4 years and then he's gone having success for somebody else's team where I got to root against him. I want them to stick around. And you just know in the back of your mind, you talk about Josh Donaldson, he has a big year and he's gone the next. The A's are always going to be, it feels like always going to be the team to sell a year early rather than a year late. And And I mean, it's smart business in the sense that you get something back for your investment instead of letting them walk for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But as a fan, you just want one guy. Give me one guy that the organization sits down and goes, you know what, we're not going to let him walk. Let it be Matt Chapman. Throw money at Matt Chapman, let him stay. I think he would stay if you paid him what he's worth. But he's an example of a guy that I think is going to be gone soon, and it's unfortunate. And I think that we talked about, the fans keep their fingers crossed that maybe someday a new owner will come in and pay the players and want to be competitive. That arena is going to shake the ground and go nuts if they ever get that stadium. I shouldn't say arena.
Yeah. Great insight there on Billy Beane and on ownership and on, their commitment to players. And yeah, hopefully they do commit to somebody and keep them there in the green and gold. That's another one thing I want to mention. I should have brought it up at the top of the show. Their colors, they're the only team, I think, to have the green and gold. There's a lot of blue, there's a lot of red across baseball. But the green and gold, you don't see that anywhere else.
And they've got like a green and white, but it's like a Irish green.
Kelly green.
There you go. You got it. Beautiful.
Yeah. And it goes well with all your college gear, right?
Yeah, I can wear a Cal Poly sweatshirt out there, and nobody has a problem with me. And I think I have actually on quite a few occasions.
So those are the questions. Again, make sure to follow on Twitter and Instagram so you can get your questions in for next week. Matt, we've discussed the roster in depth, and now let's grade the roster. And again, when we do this, I like to give it a letter grade, and it's in comparison to all the other rosters I've created. I know, you don't have the spreadsheet that I have all of my rosters, and especially, the AL Central and East is yet to be released. I know you listen to every episode and you follow along and you've seen the National League teams here. So you have somewhat of an idea. So what would you grade this A's roster that I've created? And, maybe what are some of its strengths and weaknesses?
So overall, I'm going to give it a B+, A-. I think the strength in the roster is obviously for me the starting pitching. Position players and relievers, I think, could be a little bit stronger. But, if you have pitching, keeping guys off the base paths and giving you a chance, keeping you in games, I think you got a shot. So I'm going to give it a B+, A-.
Okay, yeah. I think the strength of the team, I agree with those pitchers. They're all workhorses. A lot of innings from the starters, aside from Rich Hill and that abbreviated season before the trade. But the rest of those guys, they take the ball every fifth day and they give you a lot of innings. So that's nice. The infield is very strong. The outfield is weak, and in the outfield, you would like to get some big offensive numbers out of your outfield. But the outfield is a weak spot, and catchers are also not great offensively. I would like to see more pop out of the offense. And they're below average in most offensive categories, although playing in Oakland may have something to do with that. That is a pitcher's park. It's tough to hit the ball out there, and there's so much foul territory that, that helps the pitchers immensely. And getting back to the pitchers, even though, maybe it's kind of by design, but they don't have the best K rates. So I would like to see more strikeouts from the pitchers. But they do a great job of limiting runs. Their ERA as a staff is solid. The bullpen ERA, very good. But again, the bullpen could see more strikeouts. And so, with the weaknesses in the outfield and behind the dish, and then with the lack of the dominant strikeout arms, I think overall they're about average. I'm gonna say around C. But yeah, we'll see kind of how it plays out overall. It's tough because they look They got those big three. What's that?
Blasphemy, Billy. You gave my guys a C. You're hurting me.
That's yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some disagreement out there, and if you guys have disagreement with my grade, the inbox is open. Let me hear it. But yeah, I'm giving them a C. I think they're a solid C, and that's what it is. I'll defend it. But again, if you disagree, the inbox is open.
Luckily, I got these guys' phone numbers. I'm gonna put them on blast and tell them to get out here and play.
Okay. All right. Good. I'll field all their calls. Matt, as we wrap up the program, I'll throw it to you first for your final thoughts on the Oakland A's.
Final thought on the Oakland A's. You got a team that's generally going to have some young guys, some homegrown talent that are going to go out and play hard. They're gonna make pitchers work. They're gonna try to make the right play more often than they don't. They got a good manager that gets the best out of them. And, if you're flipping through the channels and you see an ESPN game or something like that, and you're out of market, watch the A's, give them a chance. I think it's an underdog team worth rooting for when they're not playing against your guys, and they're a fun watch.
Yeah. Cannot argue with that. Great points. My final thoughts on the A's. I mean, I kind of want to focus on Billy Beane because, he's been a constant through the organization for so long, and he really has revolutionized baseball with his Moneyball style. And despite that limited payroll, he has consistently put a competitive and winning teams on the field. However, despite all that success in the regular season and all those postseason appearances, the A's have only won, counting 2020 and that, wild card series, that opening best of 3 series, they've only won 2 playoff series, one prior to 2020. So they've only advanced past the ALDS once. That was when I think they swept the Twins, I want to say, in like 2006. So then the A's were swept by the Tigers, I think, in the ALCS. So they have not had that success in the postseason. And I know that Beane refers to the postseason as a crapshoot, and he's pretty much correct in that because it's such a small sample. But I think that, when you go there so many times and all the success that he's had in the regular season, I think that, I don't know, maybe they got to look at go back to the drawing board and maybe see if there's something different that they can do to have that success in the postseason. He's obviously much smarter than we are in terms of constructing a baseball organization and the roster and putting the pieces together. So maybe they can figure it out, but I feel like you can't just toss it up as being the postseason being a crapshoot. I think that you've got to, look at it and try to find something that will work. And, as we finish up, I just want to say, how can you not be romantic about baseball?
Well, especially when you're looking at me in the eyes.
Matt, I've had a lot of fun talking about the Oakland A's with you. It's probably more fun talking the A's with you than the Giants. But yeah, it's been fun having you back on the program. So we appreciate you joining us again.
Yeah, thank you. And for the listeners, go out there and fill out a roster. This is a fun thing. Definitely try it.
All right. Thanks. It's been fun. This is Billy Ballas of Box Seat Banter signing off.